afternoon, everyone. My name is Ronan O'Malley. I'm the Director of Programs for the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. Sorry, we're starting a few minutes late. As you can imagine, we're very delighted and thrilled to have any direct connection from Kyiv or from any parts of Ukraine, and sometimes it's a little more difficult, a little more complicated than you might expect. We're truly honored to have MP Oleksiy Goncharenko. He will have a conversation with us here in a few minutes, but just want to let you know about some of our upcoming events. This is our last event for this year, but we'll be opening up in January with two speakers who have an awful lot of direct, intimate understanding of basically the United States, our role in Europe and NATO, and more directly say regarding Russia and Ukraine. On January 18th in the Woodlands and January 19th in Houston, we'll be hosting former U.S. Ambassador to NATO and the former Deputy U.S. National Security Advisor, General Douglas Lute. That'll be on January 18th and 19th. And at the end of January, on January 27th, we'll be hosting a luncheon here in Houston with former Secretary of State and former Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo. So now I just want to let you know about our excellent speaker today. Oleksiy Goncharenko has served as the People's Deputy of Ukraine since 2014. He's a member of the European Solidarity faction. In February 2022, he was appointed Vice President of the Committee on Migration, Refugees, and Displaced Persons in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, also known as PACE. After the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Goncharenko continued to fight Russian propaganda on the information front, actively cooperated with dozens of international media outlets to bring truth about the real situation in Ukraine to the world, and drew attention to the necessary support measures that Western countries can provide. He previously served as deputy head of the Odessa Regional Council. In August 2014, after the Revolution of Dignity, he was made head of the Odessa Regional Council for several months. During the so-called referendum in Crimea in 2014, the kind of artificial fake referendum that Putin pushed, Goncharenko came to the peninsula and opposed the separation of Crimea from Ukraine. For his active pro-Ukrainian activities, he was included in the sanctions personas list by the Russian Federation. Goncharenko graduated with distinction from the Medical University, where he joined the Green Party of Ukraine and led its youth department in the Odessa region. He also studied at the Academy of National Economy under the government of the Russian Federation in Moscow, receiving a degree in economics and financial management. Will you please all join me in welcoming MP Oleksiy Goncharenko. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Malley, and for your kind presentation and me and for invitation to speak today.
Well, thank you. And we're truly honored to have you. And I know your time is valuable and you might have to leave a bit before the top of the hour. Before we get into where we are with the war in Ukraine now, I think it's important for American and all audiences to remember, as you say many times, this war didn't start in 2022. It started, realistically speaking, in 2014 after the Maidan Revolution. Putin got upset, worried that Ukraine was drifting away from his grasp, drifting perhaps to Europe. He artificially seized Crimea and fomented and supported an insurgency that led to a brutal civil war in the Donbas, taking large parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. During these 8 years, about 14,000 Ukrainians on both sides died before the war even started in February. Can you talk about what that war starting in 2014 really did to the Ukrainian people in terms of realizing the true danger of Putin, and maybe in a sense why it helped you now for when Putin launched his full-scale, complete invasion here in February?
Thank you very much for your questions. And first of all, I should tell you that there was no a civil war in Ukraine in 2014-15 from the very beginning. And that was one of the things that I did there that time. In April 2014, when all events in the eastern part of our country were just starting, in one of the cities, it was Gorlovka near Donetsk in Donbas, I filmed a Russian officer who said, and he presented himself as a colonel of Russian army. And then it was, really the fact discovered that that was a lieutenant colonel of Russian military intelligence. who was leading this so-called insurgency there. So from the very beginning, it was in the hands of Russians. And in August 2014, they started a direct invasion to Donbas. So there was no civil war. There was a Russian aggression against Ukraine starting from 2014. First Crimea, then Donbas, and from February 24 this year, the whole country, unfortunately, is involved. So that is the reality. Speaking about why and like people understanding of this, before these events, like even I think that's important to mention to people who are watching us, because like not long ago, I spoke at ALEC conference. ALEC is American Legislators Exchange Council organization. I was invited there to speak. And when I made a speech about situation in Ukraine, then one of state senators of Arizona raised his hand and asked, "So, and why you are killing Russian-speaking people in Ukraine?" And that is completely not true. That is Russian propaganda. That is something absolutely nothing common with reality. But this was like a real person and state senator from Arizona. I explained to him that I am Russian-speaking person, that I know more poems of Russian poets than Putin and all his entourage. That my family, I was born in Odessa, which is mostly Russian-speaking, and my family lives there and now, and there is no one person in the world who killed more Russian-speaking than Vladimir Putin. During last decades, at least, we can speak about it. And the most suffering part of Ukrainian population today is a Russian-speaking population, because Putin mostly attacked Russian-speaking people, populated areas, like Mariupol, which is destroyed to rubble, and like tens of thousands of people are just killed. Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, and other cities, including my native Odessa. So that is all Russian propaganda. Yeah, in Ukraine you have, both languages are spoken. So I speak fluently. I consider my mother tongue both languages, Russian and Ukrainian, and like millions of Ukrainians in the same situation. But the fact that we speak Russian doesn't make us any property of Putin. And like we love our country. We're Ukrainian patriots. But before 2014, many of us we thought that Russia is like can be a very good friend, ally of Ukraine, so we can cooperate. We believe that like a big Europe from Vladivostok to Lisbon can be built and unite. But now starting from 2014, it became clear that for Putin, Europe from Vladivostok to Lisbon, it's when Lisbon is like Vladivostok. And for us, it was quite opposite, when Vladivostok is like Lisbon and Paris and London and other cities. So that is empire. Russia is empire. And this is empire of evil, like President Reagan once told. And this is the last colonial empire in Europe. This empire cannot live normally. They're very aggressive. They started the war in Georgia in 2008. They are very much involved in the war in Syria. They are making terroristic attacks in Salisbury, in Germany, Salisbury, UK, Germany, in Czech Republic. They try to intervene in Africa. They try to put as much chaos in the world as possible. And before this empire would be stopped, there will be no security, at least on the continent, but in general on the planet. And this empire considers it's the biggest enemy, not Ukraine. Sorry, but the United States of America. And Putin says it absolutely openly, that this is Putin's war, not against Ukraine, but against, first of all, the West, led by the United States. That's something I think we should be explained to people. And as you said, I started my second education was in Moscow. It was in 2002, 2005. So many years ago, before invasion. So like I had before all these like friends in Russia and relatives there and so on. But I'm absolutely saying you like what is the fact. And you said about my story that I was put in sanction list. It's not the worst thing they did. Twice they tried to organize my killing and one kidnapping. Just for understanding what is the gang of Putin, it's really gang, which runs this country.
And related to that, Do you think, obviously you're someone who's very familiar with Putin, the worse than darkest sides of it, as you mentioned, assassination attempts against you, obviously assassination attempts against other prominent Ukrainian politicians. When it comes to his invasion, and seemingly he was expecting to have large numbers of Ukrainians, or in particular, maybe ethnic Ukrainians or Russian-speaking Ukrainians, to rise up, and they're saying, we welcome the Russian soldiers with flowers. Why do you think he got that so incredibly wrong, and that he and really the world, I mean, the United States and the West included, did not realize how fiercely Ukrainians would fight and how they would fight together, and that tens of thousands would be willing to put their lives on the line to fight as soldiers, and millions more would be willing to support the effort, in war effort, whatever way they could?
Because not many people, including Putin, really looked into the Ukrainian history. If you will take a look in Ukrainian history, you will see that Ukraine for centuries was trying to escape from this empire and was trying to get its independence. Like we several times we already started to create our states, our independent state, Ukraine, and then Russia again attacked us and destroyed it. And every time, like 100 years ago, for example, it happened for the last time when the Russian Empire collapsed, and like some countries were successful to run away from Russia, like Finland, like Poland, but some not, like Ukraine. And after this, what had happened with Ukrainians? Holodomor. It's a genocide which was organized by Bolsheviks, by communists in Ukraine, because of which, it's hard to say, but millions, just imagine the number, millions of Ukrainians were starved to death. Absolutely consciously, the bread was taken from the richest farmland in Europe, at least. Just imagine, so people who, today Ukraine is feeding like 400 million people in the world. Imagine this number, 400 million people. And this land was, Bolsheviks made that this land was so robbed that millions of people died from starvation on this land because they couldn't even like live. So we clearly understand what is under our strong, really very, I can say, courageous fight with Russians, because we know that we are fighting for the very our existence. That if Russia would win, they will never stop, they will go ahead and they will kill millions of Ukrainians in their next wars against Poland, against Romania, and so on. I have two sons, one 16 years old, one 4, 2 kids. And I can tell you that I clearly understood from the beginning, if Putin and Russia would not be stopped now, in 5 years, either my children will be killed together with me, or they will be taken to Russian army to fight against Polish people, against Lithuanians, Estonians, Georgians, Moldovians in next Russian Empire attack. Or they would be in some other way tortured. So for us, it's existential. That's why we are fighting so fiercely. And that's why me personally, like after the invasion, first month, I was in the territorial defense because like there was not much work for parliamentarian. And I came to territorial defense to help to defend our city, Kyiv, capital. And when Russians were kicked off from Kyiv, I came back to my like more usual for me duties, because I'm better with like now my phone is standing on the self stick to make Zoom with you. I'm better with self stick than with Kalashnikov. But all of us, we knew that we should fight till the end. Today we know that we need to fight till the end, because in other way, our nation will be again coming through just genocide.
And yeah, I think the first few weeks really shocked the world, in particular the Battle of Kyiv. In reality, the United States, under multiple administrations, under Obama, really, and then Trump, and then probably the early months of Biden, before the war started, we did not provide the weaponry you had requested or the levels of support you had requested up to that time. The Battle of Kyiv, you pushed the Russians back heroically with relatively smaller, more moderate weapons like HIMARS and NLAWs. But can you talk about really the huge advances that were made later, retaking Kherson and retaking Kharkiv and the areas around both of them, and basically at this stage, everything on the western bank of the Dnieper River, and how vital HIMARS, more advanced drones, more advanced communication systems, air defense systems, how those crucial weapons coming from the United States and our NATO allies have really allowed you to push back so valiantly against the Russians?
That is absolutely vital for us. And I want to thank you. I should start with these words. I want to thank you, United States and people of the United States of America, for all support we are receiving from you. God bless America. That's the words which everybody in Ukraine could tell today, because we really clearly understand that without your support, it would be very difficult for us. We stopped Russians near Kyiv without HIMARSs, without artillery, but with javelins, which we received from the United States. But then, after Russians were kicked off from Kyiv, without American howitzers, drones, NASAMS now arrived, and other weaponry and HIMARSs, it would be extremely difficult for us, extremely. So we're very thankful for all support we are receiving. We believe this is our common war, because we are fighting not only for ourselves and our independence. Yes, this is our independence war, but also we are fighting for our basic values, rule of law, and human rights and democracy, because all of this is part of Ukrainian life and is not part of Russian life. And what is frustrating, and I also should tell it to you, that all the time it looks like the West, the United States, are chasing after what Putin is doing. I mean, if we would have in March weaponry that we received in May, like HIMARSs, M777, howitzers, and others stuff, I can tell you because I saw it by my own eyes, as a part of territorial defense. If we would have with what to chase Russians when they were retreating, everything would be finished in April. Unfortunately, we didn't have it, and that's why we're still in this war. Today, again, if we now would receive fighters, drones, long-range missiles to HIMARSs, finally we have any good news about Patriots today. I knew this from last week, but today already CNN announced that, yes, probably this week it will be announced that first Patriot system will come to Ukraine. With these advanced weaponry, again, battle tanks, long-range missiles, fighters, and drones, we can crush Russian army in several months. That is absolutely possible. But these decisions, these political decisions, for the moment, has not been made. We believe that they will be made, and that will finish this war much quicker than it could be. So that's what's important today for us.
And obviously the strategic calculus is not easy for an American president or European counterparts. When the war started, there were concerns about being seen as too directly getting involved militarily, and perhaps the war escalated into a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia, going along with the multiple times Putin has intimated he is willing to consider the use of nuclear weapons, even if it's smaller tactical nuclear weapons. How seriously do you think we need to take the considerations that he would use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, or perhaps even more devious, and if anything, has no problems being immoral, using a dirty bomb, detonating a nuclear, weapon just to release the radiation, even without the explosives power, somewhere in Ukraine, and then blaming it on Ukraine as a pretense to escalate the war even more?
It's a very good question, and first of my answer, I am sure Putin is bluffing when he is speaking about nuclear threat, and he always uses this nuclear blackmailing style, and he mentions this constantly and very often. But he is bluffing. I'm sure about this, and that will be a suicide for Putin. From a military point of view, certainly that will be disaster for our country, but also that will be disaster for Russia. And I see that the world made the needed steps. So first of all, the work was done with China and India. And even these countries said clearly and openly that Putin will be complete pariah if he will go nukes, even tactical. And Indian Prime Minister, the last news, refused to meet with Putin because of this nuclear blackmailing. That is a strong signal. And also from China, there was a clear signal that nuclear blackmailing should be stopped. From second point of view, I knew there was a meeting of director of CIA Burns with the Russian Director of Intelligence Naryshkin in Ankara, in the Turkish capital. And I know that Burns gave a signal to Russia what military response will be from the United States and NATO in case if Putin will go nukes. Combining these two things, I can tell you that it will be a suicide for Putin. That will be a suicidal step. And in reality, he doesn't need this. I mean, that he tries to show that losing to Ukraine is kind of a red line for him, or losing Crimea is a red line for him. But in reality, it's not. It's just a game of Putin. Just watch on the map. Just watch on the map of the world, see Russia and see Crimea, for example. I mean, it's so small comparing to the territory which Putin controls today. And who said that people in Novosibirsk, it's in Siberia, or in Vladivostok and Far East, they care about Crimea? They don't care about Crimea. And it's only Putin. He wants just to solidify his gains because he wants to continue this war in several years. He doesn't want to stop it. He thinks, okay, now it's coming not very good. I need time to refresh, replenish, and then to restart the war. So he's playing this KGB game as a KGB officer, trying to show that, oh no, don't make me desperate. But he will not be desperate. He just needs to get out from Ukraine, retreat, and he will have still 1/7 part of the whole world under his control. What's the problem with this? I mean, so it's a problem for this 1/7 part and for the whole world, but it's not problem for him with his machine of propaganda to sell it to Russian people, to say, oh, we needed to do this, because of A, B, C, D. So he will not be so desperate. He will not go nukes. So I don't believe in all this, his game. That's what I think about it.
And related to really the last 2 months, for all the war crimes Putin and those under him have committed in Mariupol or Bucha beforehand, they have just taken it to an entirely new level. In some ways, it reminds me of the Battle of Britain in World War II, where Hitler militarily started attacking strategic targets and airfields in England. When that wasn't working out militarily, he decided to just take it to the civilian population and attempt to destroy and bomb English cities into oblivion. Putin is doing the same thing. He's already destroyed tens of thousands of homes, apartments, schools, hospitals, even shelters where people could hide. But now he's just taking another level further of attacking, electrical grids and distribution points, places where central heating can be reduced for a part of a neighborhood, water treatment facilities, just absolute horrific crimes against the civilian population. Do you think he's doing that with the hopes that he thinks the Ukrainian people will get so desperate that they'll beg Zelensky and beg others like you to make some sort of peace agreement?
Yeah, he thinks so. And by this, he shows again that he absolutely doesn't understand Ukrainians. He's acting like a terrorist. And it's a terror tactics to put terror on civilians. Now I'm speaking with you. I'm in Kyiv. Part of Kyiv is without electricity now. But yesterday, in the last days, I was in Odessa, my native city, where my family is now. And like almost for 3 days, my family was without electricity. Me also, like my apartment. Now, even speaking with you at this moment, I don't know, do we have electricity or not? Like several hours ago, it was not electricity. Still in my apartment. And certainly people are suffering from this. Just imagine living on the 15th floor, big residential building, no electricity. It means no elevators, electrical oven, so people can't cook, no heating, no running water because the water couldn't be pumped up. Certainly it's impossible to live like this. It's unbearable conditions of life, what he tries to make. But we are doing our best. We hope that this decision to provide Ukraine with more air defense will protect our power grid. We're trying to repair everything as quickly as possible. And I can tell you one thing, like Hitler made a mistake bombing London and British civilians during Second World War. That hasn't changed their attitude to Hitler. They just became more furious about him and Nazi Germany. The same will be here. And is here. Ukrainians are just furious with what's going on. Yeah, we are suffering. That is difficult. But at the same time, we clearly understand that we need to win this war. And and we cannot give up anything to a so evil power like Putin shows himself and Russian Empire shows itself.
And I think a lot of people are perhaps surprised that knowing the absolute depths and the worst of the Ukrainian winter is coming. You're in December now, and January and February in front of you. Very, very hard and difficult conditions for men on the front lines in the trenches, even if they're not fighting. But Ukraine has not slowed down the fight. Is the country's intention to fight just as fiercely, just as much straight through the winter? And is that because you don't want to give any chance for the Russians to regroup? And also that in some ways, maybe you see it as some form of a kind of a tactical or strategic advantage to be able to fight through the winter?
I'm not my 1 month in territorial defense doesn't give me real expertise and capacity to speak with you about on a good level, which you deserve, about military things. I believe in our general staff. I believe in our generals and officers. They certainly will want to win this war as quickly as possible. But at the same time, we can't just we don't use our soldiers as cannon fodder like Putin is doing. So we continue our offensive. We are successful from the early September when we started. These 3 months, there were months of successful operations of Ukrainian army. I hope this will continue. So we will see how the winter will influence the war. The only thing which I definitely know, because our generals are telling this, and this is clear, that the more advanced weaponry we will receive today, the more effective we will be next weeks and months. That's something absolutely clear.
And whether it takes many more months or possibly even years, is the intention to fight and reclaim all of Ukraine, to reclaim all parts of Donetsk and Luhansk, take back all of Donbas, take back all of Crimea, no matter how hard and difficult it is? Is that the intention of the Ukrainian people and government?
Yes, it is the intention of Ukrainian people, and because Ukraine is democracy, the government will follow this call from people, and that is our common intention. And why? I should explain you. It's not only because, yes, we want to liberate all our lands, but there are 2 more reasons. First of all, that Ukrainians on occupied territories, that Russia is committing genocide against them. And unfortunately, all 5 criteria of genocide, including sexual crimes, forceful deportation of people, first of all, children, in order to change their identity, destruction of all cultural heritage. And so everything, all criteria of what is genocide according to international law, unfortunately, they are met on occupied territories. So we can't leave our people under genocide. That's something we can't do with our compatriots. The second thing is that after 2014, when we spoke at the beginning, the war started, then in the February 2015, there was kind of a ceasefire, which was called Minsk Agreement. Mm-hmm. So we tried to go diplomatic way with Russia, and how it finished with a full-scale invasion. So we clearly understand that Russia doesn't understand any language except of language of force, and before each last inch of our territory will be liberated, we cannot be calm. We cannot say the work is done. And Ukrainians, we want peace, but we don't want ceasefire. That's the difference. So that's why we understand the peace based on international law, and it means a complete restoration of Ukrainian territorial integrity. And when even one Russian soldier is staying on the 1 inch of our territory, the war is not over, and that is why for us it's unacceptable.
I think that all obviously makes a lot of sense, and obviously there would be concerns that if there was some armistice reached, as we had, say, sadly, in North Korea and South Korea, that's 7 years later, it's an unfinished war, still a hot war sometimes, or with hot possibilities. 4 or 5 years from now, Russia could invade again. Understandably, we might be a long way off from any form of a peace agreement, but I presume any peace agreement that has reached, the number one concern from President Zelensky and yourself and the Russian people would be an absolute and forcefully, backed up defensive agreement with the West. Ukraine in the 1990s gave up the third largest nuclear weapons stockpile in the world. In exchange, the Russians were supposed to recognize your validity as an independent country and respect your borders. Obviously, Putin has violated that completely, if not kept the terms of Minsk. If an agreement can be reached, is there anything short of membership in NATO that Ukrainians would consider sufficient to provide for your kind of collective defense against Russia?
Yeah, the best, as we see, the only guarantees which works, it's Article 5 of NATO, this collective defense basis, because Putin would be happy to attack Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, these not big countries, but he can't do this, and he's not doing this just because these countries are members of NATO. And he attacked Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, because we are not. So that is one thing that works. The second thing which can work is some kind of agreement treaty between Ukraine and the United States. We believe in the United States. And also, by the way, Ukraine today is a valuable ally for the United States. We have the strongest army on the continent already, with the biggest battlefield experience. We are ready to fight shoulder to shoulder with the Americans wherever it will be needed. And I think that we can, as an ally, we can be a very strong ally of the United States. And some kind of an ally agreement of mutual defense with the United States can also be an option. So understand that, if somebody will attack Ukraine or the United States, it will mean that both countries are attacked. That's also something which can work. By the way, I should tell it here, I think, but it's important to those who are saying, and I also read these people who are saying, wow, why we should come help Ukraine? It's a faraway country, somewhere over the ocean. Yeah, some bad things are happening there, but we have our own problems and so on. I should tell you that investments in Ukrainian army is probably one of the best investments in U.S. history, because we were provided with 3% of United States military budget, 3%. And with this, we destroyed at least 50% of Russian military capacity, which is the second biggest rival of the United States after China, and without not losing any one American soldier. So I think this is a very good investment, and we are very effective with the money and weapon with it we received from the United States. So that's why I believe that we should be as close as possible in our mutual cooperation, being real allies, and being Ukraine should be a stronghold of the United States in Eastern Europe.
I think all of us, pray and hope and keep supporting Ukrainian people who are fighting basically the world's fight. They are the tip of the spear in fighting against autocracy and dictatorship. The world should learn and hopefully support Ukraine for the many months and years to come. If and when Ukraine is able to get to some form of stability, have Russian troops off their soil, maybe you could talk from your own perspective. I know you mentioned, obviously, you're from Odessa, a city with a large ethnic, Russian population, a lot of native Russian speakers, as is the case in large parts of Donbas and obviously Crimea, a very high percentage. Can you maybe talk about your own kind of, I suppose, evolution? You started perhaps in a party, the Party of Regents, that had more of a Russian outlook to it. I think before, obviously, things went very badly after the Maidan Revolution. But can you talk about how your own kind of political outlook changed, and maybe also how that can maybe reflect upon how ordinary, Ukrainians of, Russian descent or ethnic Russians might also kind of feel they could be a part of a greater Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I was member of Party of Regions for 9 years, which was party. It was not pro-Russian at the moment when I was there, but it was like saying that Russia is a very big friend and ally of Ukraine, and we should cooperate at the most with Russia. But at the same time, it was saying that we need to go to Europe. But the idea was that we should go to Europe together with Russia, like I told you at the beginning. But 2014 showed everything, and when the Revolution of Dignity started, and the leader of Party of Regions, which was former President Yanukovych, said that we will not go to Europe, but instead of this, we will go to Russia, to some kind of allies led by Russia. I said that I'm completely against of this. I see our future in Europe. And when Russia started, and so I left this party. And when Russia started attack on our country, it became clear that Russia is our enemy, and enemy which should be defeated. Without this, we can't be independent and successful. So that is my personal evolution from a person like being born in Russian-speaking city, which was Russian-speaking, but also Ukrainian, who started in Moscow, who considered that Russia can be a normal country, which we can be like a very good allies and move together to Europe, to understanding that Russia is an empire, which doesn't want any development, which just wants new territories, new territories, all-time aggression, killing, destructing. So, and that this empire should be stopped. And ideally, I believe that Russian empire should be finished. And till this empire exists, they will be dangerous for the world. And they will benefit, like Germany. No one more in the world benefits from denazification, which happened in Germany after 1945, than Germans themselves. Germany built a prosperous, wonderful, successful country, but only after they came through denazification, they became democracy with the rule of law, with human rights, and Germans are happy people today. So Russians can create and build a normal state, but for this, they should go through de-imperialization. That's what I believe in. That's what I think.
And lastly, would you be supportive of kind of a higher degree of autonomy, or kind of a higher degree of, power within the oblasts of Donetsk, of Luhansk, or say of Crimea, for areas that have a higher Russian percentage population?
No need in this. There is no problem with the Russian-speaking people in Ukraine. The only problem for Russian-speaking in Ukraine is Putin and Russia attacking us. We don't have any problems. We can use like Ukrainians, Russians, languages are used in. So there is no one problem with it. It's like, when Russians were telling that Ukrainians are Nazis, and at the same time our president is Jew. So, so we are Nazis who elected Jew as a president. So, I mean, it's insane. So we are a very tolerant country with no problems. We don't need any autonomous. All this stuff was made by Russians. That was their propaganda and stamps that they try to put on us. But it's absolutely nothing. We will live happily in our country when we will kick off Russians from our country. That's all.
And I know you have to go in about 7 or 8 minutes, but I just want to get to
we can make 5 minutes more, because it's important. I appreciate very much that you found time. So I'm waiting for questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Darina asks, the most important weapon of war is messaging and controlling the story. What is the Ukrainian government doing in that sphere, not only in Europe and America, but so in particular in Russia and Russian-influenced countries?
Absolutely, I agree 100%. This is a 21st century, and this is a hybrid war, and informational war is very important. Me, for example, I have almost 1.5 million followers in my social media, in my Twitter, which is almost completely English-speaking, in my Facebook and Telegram, which are mostly Ukrainian-speaking, and my YouTube, with almost 900,000 followers, is mostly Russian-speaking. And like many people from Russia, from Kazakhstan, from Belarus, Russian-speaking people from the United States, for example, those who left the Soviet Union and so on, they are following my channel, and that is very important part of work for us, and we are doing this work. And also, like, you also can help me to spread our messages, and like, it's a big honor for me to speak with the organization today, and I have a lot of respect to great state of Texas. And I can tell you that one of the things which we now preparing, I am already invited by several United States, US states, to speak in their legislative bodies, to address their legislative bodies. And if you will find interesting for me to speak in Texas Texas Congress, Texas Senate, to address legislative body of a great state of Texas, I will be absolutely happy to come to speak. that is very important. We believe in federalism. We know that it is United States of America. So with all respect, I will be happy to speak on the level of state legislative body of Oklahoma, Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, California, or any other state. So that's, just keep in mind, and if you will feel that it's interesting for you, I will be happy to do this. So we need to spread our message as widely as possible and to explain to people what's going on in our country and why it is important for people throughout the whole planet, first of all, including the United States.
Absolutely. And I can tell Lydia or your assistants, we're happy to, you might already have connections, but with the governor's office, we'd be happy to connect you. And if you come to Texas, we'd be honored to host you in Houston as well. Another excellent and interesting question. Okay, well, thank you. Someone, they didn't leave a name, but it said it was reported today that Twitter blocked verification / two-factor verification for Ukrainian IP addresses. What are the implications of this? And do you think this is a simple technical error or something done intentionally by Elon Musk?
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I'm not familiar with this situation. I'm active in Twitter.
I'm not either,
more than 100,000 followers. I have this blue tick, yes, that I'm verified. Okay. So I don't know about any problems with this. So sorry, I just can't comment because I don't know. But in general, what I can tell you, that I have big respect to American entrepreneurs, and Elon Musk is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in human history. So I have a very big respect. But when he started to speak about geopolitics, about some kind of what should be negotiations and other things, I just can tell one thing. First of all, I said it, I was invited to American media, and I said, if you want to make concessions of something, you can make concessions of something which is yours. So he can give to, I don't know, to Russians or to anybody his shares of Tesla or I don't know, of anything else, but he can't give some territory of Ukraine. Secondly, if you want to speak about something, just come to our country. I invite Elon Musk to come to us to see what's going on, to be more familiar with the situation before making any conclusions. I will be absolutely happy also to meet with him and to explain why it is important, why I think that what things he is missing in his understanding of what's going on in Ukraine. Like the same about Tucker Carlson. That's a man whose show is watching millions of Americans. And I said in my public, I sent to him letter privately, but he was not responding. So I make it publicly in Twitter, video, that I want to come to your show. You are speaking sometimes about Ukraine. Give us the possibility to reply and to say why it is important and where you are not right. So I want to speak with all people whom I can reach, who are influential, who can influence humans' minds, and to explain what's going on in Ukraine, because I know many of them not.
Another question from Bill. He asks, what about international peacekeepers after a mutually acceptable peace treaty? What would be your perspective on that? And I suppose the implication is international peacekeepers, would they be necessary within Ukraine if there were still kind of possible sources of insurgency as we've had in Donbas for the last 8 years?
It looks like everything will be decided on the battlefield, because unfortunately any negotiations with Russians are almost impossible, because as you saw, they annexed our new territory, saying that it is again Russia. So with this kind of their attitude, what negotiations could we have? So if we will just win, and I'm sure that we will win on the battlefield, then the main peacekeepers for us will be our army, and they will be strong enough to keep the peace. I'm not against peacekeepers, absolutely. Blue helmets can control the border between Ukraine and Russia. Why not? They can watch what's going on. But the real guarantee is strong army and strong allies. And the strongest ally in the world is the United States. And we, as I already said, I believe in our... I believe in the United States of America and its leadership in the free world. I believe in general in free world, and I believe that Ukraine will be a very important part of it.
Okay. A question here from, I think, one of our veterans, or maybe they're active duty. Chief Warrant Officer Snyder asks, with the extreme winter weather in Ukraine now, do you see the fighting slowing or stopping until more mild weather in the spring?
No, it's not. For the moment, not. And even quite opposite. Now it's already freezing. There was quite stop when it was a mud, and this time of Rasputitsa. Now it is the ground is freezing, and so I don't see any stopping of fighting, and the fighting is very active now in the eastern part of our country.
Okay, a good question here from Sydney, and I think it's largely what the United States as a country and our European allies are I think absolutely, hopefully, going to support in the years to come. Sydney asks, what do you see as the post-war reconstruction looking like for Ukraine? And will it be necessary to rebuild, physical and social infrastructure? What do you see as a rebuilding process? And I suppose more broadly, we're providing defensive, military capabilities now, but it will take tens of billions of dollars of economic assistance after the war. Could you discuss what you expect and what you hope for in that capacity?
Unfortunately, I think not tens, but hundreds of billions of dollars. The country is devastated, and the war is continuing. So how I see it, so first, certainly victory, but we can start some things even now. But then I believe that Ukraine should not rebuild Soviet-style Ukraine, but to build a new country with all new technologies. I believe that United States companies should play a very big role in this. I think that it should be paid by Russian money. It's not American taxpayers who should pay for what Putin and Russia did in Ukraine. And with hundreds of billions of frozen assets of Russia throughout the whole world, including the United States, Europe, this money should be frozen. Then they should be seized in benefit of Ukraine. And then on this money, this reparation should happen. And once again, that will be the biggest construction project of the first half of 21st century. And I think that United States should play a very big role here. And I know that you have many people from business society, and I encourage American business to come to take part in the construction of our country. That will only strengthen the ties between our countries. And that is something which will be very important. Also, I need to add now, I think it's important, and also one thing which we are doing, I run the network of educational cultural centers in Ukraine, which are called Goncharenko centers. They were educational cultural before the invasion. So we had and we have today English language free of charge for adults and children. We have 25 of these centers in Ukraine. That is the biggest non-governmental educational cultural network in the country. We will be absolutely happy to cooperate with anybody who's now watching us. Yeah, and I don't know, we can make some project in some city, or you can maybe, if you can, some possibilities, capacities for humanitarian aid, or maybe you're interested in education and we can make some courses together with you, online courses for Ukrainians, free of charge for people and other things. So we will be absolutely happy. I think that this process, the main investment is investment in people. And when we will invest in people, then we will rebuild the country.
And lastly, you've been so kind to give us a time. I know you're on television interviews or radio interviews, literally all around the world, and also still performing your full-time day job in the Ukrainian Parliament, and also for PACE in the Council of Europe. What is maybe the last thing you'd like to leave our audience with? The American audience more broadly, and maybe any of our people who are watching now, or especially I know the semifinal of the World Cup, some people are going to watch this again later, but maybe especially for kind of Ukrainian and Russian viewers who might be watching this.
I would tell one thing. We are very thankful for all support we are receiving that I address to US people. This is a really fight which will define the next decades in the world. China is watching, other countries, now it will be decided. Will the world live on a rule base, or we will live in wild jungles where bear can hunt for peaceful nation, or tiger, or any other predator? So that is a crucial moment. So we need to win now in order to have security in the world, in order to have prosperity in the world, In order to expand free world, I believe in our values. I know that free world there is no possibility that free world just will exist like it is. Either free world will shrink or expand, and we need expand, and here should be leadership in the United States. So I believe in our victory, and again, that will be very important. So thank you very much. And one thing I can ask you to do is to pray for us, to pray for Ukraine, and God bless America.
Well, thank you so much. And as I mentioned, we would love to host you again in person next time, hopefully in Houston or any other connections in Austin, our capital. And for behalf of the council and all of our Houston and far beyond, Representative Goncharenko, thank you so much for your time. And more importantly, thank you so much for dedicating so much of your life to your country, and especially since February, knowing exactly what's on the line and the risks you take and the specific threats against you. It was an honor to host you, and we wish you and your country all the best.
It was a big honor for me. Thank you very much. And again, the victory will be ours, and that will be our common victory.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.